Marvel Strike Force fans, get ready. Three powerhouse teams are crashing into the battlefield. The Immortal X-Men, the Mighty Avengers, and the Uncanny Avengers. From unstoppable mutants to some of Earth's mightiest heroes, these teams are bringing epic synergies and game-changing abilities. So stick around as we break down what makes each team a force to be reckoned with, who you'll want to build, and how they'll dominate the meta. What's going on, everyone? It's BPG and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I make at least 2 Marvel Strike Force videos every single week, usually based around the events within the game. However, sometimes I do get time to make additional videos just like this one here. So if you find the content in this video helpful, please do consider giving the video a like, subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell so you don't miss another BPG upload. And without further ado, let's get into this, shall we? Okay, so first off, I want to say a massive shout out to Boylon, and this is my new slogan now whenever we hear something from him. Boylon was right. Huge leak a few weeks ago about Hercules and Jean Grey, and then the next huge leak, which was all the reworked kits for the characters and the teams. He's doing a great thing for the community, in my opinion, getting us the information a lot earlier than what Scopely are willing to give it to us. You know, you've just got to think that if we had the information from them at the time when they wanted, we would have had 2 weeks rather than a month to work on these characters. So, you know, it's a pretty big deal in my opinion, especially in a game that is based around resource management. Okay, so you're going to want to strap yourself in for this video because it is a bit of a long one. We are covering all 3 teams, including 8 reworks and 2 new characters. We're going to go over all the T4s. We're going to release the infographics into the wild, and I'm going to do my best to put some timestamps on this video so you guys can skip to the sections that you are most interested in. So first up, and the most important team in my opinion, is the Uncanny Avengers. This is the Spotlight Raid 2.0 team, and we're going to kick this off with the first member of that team, the first rework, Beast. Now, Beast's basic dignified strikes. This is going to attack the primary target for 210% damage and adjacent targets for 160% damage, and flip 1 positive effect into a negative effect on each target. When this character performs a counter attack or assist, they flip 2 positive effects to negative effects. Now, to T4, this one is going to add an additional 40% damage, which I don't think is really worth it. So that is why we have put this one down as a skip. Volatile Experiment. This is going to be an ability that you start with. It's going to clear 2 negative effects from self and all allies, heal self and all allies for 20% of this character's max health. And with his new health pool, that is huge. Attack all enemies for 250% damage and apply heal block. Very importantly now, if this character has a Jean Grey ally, clear all vulnerable on self and all X-Men and Uncanny Avenger allies, and this attack gains 500% extra focus. To T4 this, it's going to add an additional 50% damage to all enemies, so that's going to make the attack all enemies for 300% damage. And if this character has a Jean Grey ally, clear an additional 2 negative effects from self and all Immortal X-Men and Uncanny Avenger allies. This I have put down as a high value T4. Not essential, but definitely a high value T4, especially with the ability to clear additional negative effects. Now, one thing I will say about this is this new part here about if Jean Grey is an ally, clear all vulnerable on self and all X-Men and Uncanny Avenger allies. It might make the ISO choice that I've chosen for him redundant, but it is probably the best ISO choice for him at present. Mutant enhancement, this is his ultimate. It's going to apply offense up to self and all Blaster, Brawler and X-Men allies. Apply defense up to self and all Protector, Controller and X-Men allies. Apply speed up and generate 1 ability energy for self and all support and X-Men allies. And apply regeneration to self and all mutant allies. And the T4 on this in raids, so very important because this is where we are going to be getting our primary use of Beast. If this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, apply offense up, defense up, speed up, and generate 1 ability energy for all Uncanny Avenger allies. So that is really important. That is going to be feeding the team some ability energy. However, and I've put this down as an essential T4 on the infographic. However, this is one that you might want to hold off on for the first week or two, because when we initially go into the Spotlight 2 raids, we're going to get this Prelude Spotlight 2 raid, and we're going to be entering in with just 4 members. So the 3 we reworked plus Jean Grey. So we're not going to be able to get this ability off at the T4. So you might want to just hold back on your T4s for a little bit if you are building this character and are quite short on T4s. Stars and Garters, this is the passive. On turn, apply regeneration to the most injured ally. If that ally is an X-Men, heal that ally for 15% of this character's max health. Gain 20% resistance. X-Men allies gain 20% resistance. And if this character has 3 or more Uncanny X-Men at the start of a match, the first ally death does not count towards the loss of medals in campaigns and challenges. That's an old tag there. The T4 on this, in raids at the end of this character's first turn, if this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, generate 10 ability energy for self and all Uncanny Avenger allies. So that is going to turn every single ability on the Uncanny Avengers on. Again, however, it is tied to having 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies. So although this is, I would consider an essential T4 because it is that generating of ability energy, it is one that you could possibly hold off on, especially when you only have the 4 members for the initial Spotlight raid. Next up is Falcon, and his basic is dual SMGs. This is going to attack the primary target for 200% damage and then bonus attack for 110% damage. And in war, the bonus attack another time, so 3 attacks there for 110% piercing. The T4 on this will add an additional 30% damage to the primary attack, 10% damage to the secondary attack, and in war, an additional 10% piercing. I have put this as a skip on the T4, or at most a very luxury T4. Obviously, the war part will not work in the raids, which is where we are looking to get the most use out of Falcon. Red Wing is next. This is going to be your opening ability with Falcon. It is going to fill the speed bar for self and all allies by 30%, plus 10% for each enemy that has any positive effects. It is going to clear stealth from all allies. This attack is unavoidable and cannot be blocked. And the T4 on this, in raids, if this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, or on war offense, if this character has 4 or more Mighty Avenger allies, fill speed bar for self and all Mighty Avenger and Uncanny Avenger allies by an additional 20%. So this T4 I have put down as a high value T4. Again, it is another T4 that you could possibly skip early doors, because until you get all the members of the Uncanny Avengers, it is not going to fully work. Strafing Run. This again is another opening ability, or ability that we can use on our opener, although we probably won't because we'll probably want to be adding that speed to our team. This is going to attack all enemies for 160% damage plus 80% piercing, and for each positive effect on an enemy, bonus attack that enemy for 75% piercing. That's going to do an insane amount of damage. The T4 on this one is going to add an additional 50% damage to all enemies, so that would be 110% damage, and then 20% piercing to the primary attack. So that would be that attack all enemies. So that would be 100% piercing. In raids or on war offense, apply bleed to all enemies. Now I have put this down as a nice to have T4, and if you were to work in his T4 on his basic as well, this could be a very, very good caption for Striker on Falcon, but at the moment, we will be going with my recommendation that I've got at the moment. Exo 7 wingsuit. Before this character takes a turn, this character, an almighty Avenger and Uncanny. Exo 7 wingsuit. Before this character takes a turn, this character, an almighty Avenger and Uncanny Avenger allies cannot gain slow. Gain 25% block chance, 5% block chance per power armor, mighty Avenger or Uncanny Avenger allies, and gain 10% block amount. And the T4 on this, in raids on spawn, apply immunity to self and all Uncanny Avenger allies. And on war offense on spawn, he's going to apply immunity to self and all mighty Avenger allies. That to me is an essential T4. Putting immunity on your team on spawn is huge. Storm is up next. This is the last of the reworks for this team, and her basic shocking blow is going to attack the primary target for 180 damage. It's then going to attack all adjacent targets for 130% damage, and it's going to gain her +2 charged up to a maximum of 15. Now the T4 on this one, I have put as a skip. The T4 is going to add an additional 20% damage to the primary and secondary targets and gain +2 charged up to a maximum of 20. Now, while that does help her ultimate, I don't think that is a worthwhile T4 in my opinion. Ice Storm, this has had a huge upgrade. It costs 6 ability energy, but it does start with all 6. It is going to attack all targets for 200% damage and apply slow. It is going to apply stun for 2 turns to the primary target. That's massive. Gain +5 charged up to a maximum of 20. If this character has a Jean Grey ally. On Crucible offense, if this character has 3 or more Immortal X-Men allies, or in raids, if this character has 3 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, copy and clear all charged on all enemies to self and clear all positive effects on all enemies. This attack gains 500% extra focus, is unavoidable, and cannot be blocked or counterattacked. That is an amazing update to her special. And then the T4 on this one, which I have down as a high value T4. If Jean Grey is an ally on Crucible offense, if this character has 3 or more Immortal X-Men allies, or in raids, if this character has 3 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, apply trauma for 2 turns to all enemies. That is a huge ability, and when we go on to her speed later on, you will see why this is so big. Storm of the Century, this is her ultimate. It is a 10 cost ability, but it should be ready within your sort of second turn to go on this one. Attack all enemies for 100% damage. Damage is increased by 90% per charged. She's then going to lose all charged. And if this character has 20 or more charged, this attack cannot miss. The T4 in this is going to add 10% damage to all enemies and 10% damage per charge. Now, Storm is looking like she's going to be your damage dealer all told. So that extra 10% damage and the extra 10% damage per charge makes that a nice to have T4. It's not something I would rush out and do, but it's certainly something I'm going to be looking at doing on my Storm. Ride the Wind. On turn, gain speed up for 2 turns and apply speed up to X-Men, X-Force and Uncanny Avenger allies. On X-Men, X-Force and Uncanny Avenger ally turn, 50% chance to grant assist now to self or a random X-Men, X-Force or Uncanny Avenger ally. So that is where the assist chance thing is going to come from with the Cosmic Crucible rules. And the T4 on this one is going to mean she gains +3 charged on turn up to a maximum of 20. Now I've put this down again as a nice to have T4 because all it is gaining those charges on turn. And that is just on her turn, I believe, not on any turn. If that was on any turn, that would be actually a really good T4 because that means she'll be coming back round to those 20 charges quite quickly. But as it is, I've put that down as a nice to have T4. Next up, the first of the new characters, Jean Grey. She will be coming to us on the 3rd of January, which is a great birthday present for myself to be able to unlock Jean Grey, as she has been one of my favorite X-Men characters. I would have much preferred to have seen her as Marvel Girl like this rather than the Jean Grey that we are getting, but I'll take Jean Grey as she is. Jean Grey's basic is called Psywave. It is going to attack the primary target for 220% damage, apply defense down for 1 turn and heal block for 2 turns. And if we T4 this one, which I do not recommend doing the T4 on it as such, is going to do 80% extra damage to the primary target, making that 300% damage and apply defense down for 2 turns. So all it is really doing is making that defense down go for 2 turns rather than 1 turn. Telekinetic Blitz. This is an ability she is going to start with. She's going to attack all enemies for 240% damage. She's going to prolong the duration of all negative effects for all enemies by 1. And she's going to apply following negative effects for 2 turns to all enemies. Defense down, heal block, and disrupted. So with Storm and her ability, she's going to put up the slow and the trauma. And then you're going to do this telekinetic blitz with Jean Grey, which is going to apply the defense down, the heal block, the disrupted. It's just so good. This attack gains 500% extra focus. On Crucible offense, you're going to reduce the speed bar of all enemies by 25%. And if this character has 3 or more Immortal X-Men allies, this attack cannot miss and cannot be blocked or counterattacked. And in raids, the same applies. If this character has 3 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, this attack cannot miss and cannot be blocked or counterattacked. So no reduction of speed bar there for the enemies. The T4 on this is going to add an additional 60% damage. So that will attack all enemies for 300% damage. On the new stats, that is insane. On Crucible offense, apply Safeguard for 2 turns to self and all Immortal X-Men allies. Now, this I have put down as an essential... Now, this I've put down as a high value T4. The reason why I've put this down as a high value T4 is because we are going to be looking to make use of the Immortal X-Men as a Crucible team. We're going to go over that in a minute as to why we're doing that. But so this is a high value T4, especially if you are looking to use her on Crucible. Terror Throw. This is her ultimate attack. All enemies for 300% piercing and apply 2 bleed and clear revive once. So we have a revive once clearing character. Apply ability block to the primary target. This attack gains 1000% extra focus. and enemies killed by this attack cannot be revived. The T4 on this, which I believe is a high value T4, is going to add an additional 120% piercing to all enemies. So that means that you're going to attack everyone for 420% piercing damage. That is a heck of a damage stat there, because that will ignore the armor with the piercing. And apply ability block for 2 turns. So as I've said, that is what I would consider a high value T4. Marvel Girl, this is her passive on spawn. She's going to apply defense up to self and all X-Men and Avenger allies. She's going to barrier self and all X-Men and Avenger allies for 30% of this character's max health. On spawn, on Crucible offense, if this character has 4 or more Immortal X-Men allies, reduce the starting ability energy of each enemy's special ability by 10. Apply safeguard to self and all Immortal X-Men allies. She's then going to do the same in raids, as long as she has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies. On Crucible offense, if this character has 4 or more Immortal X-Men allies, or in raids if this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies. Before this character takes a turn, enemies cannot gain taunt. And the T4 on this, which I think is an essential T4. On Crucible offense, if this character has 4 or more Immortal X-Men allies, or in raids if this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, enemies cannot fill or reduce speed bar for themselves, allies, or enemies. And this does not apply to speed bar gained through normal means. So you cannot be turn rewound. Your enemies can't gain speed bar. They can't fill it. They can't reduce it. They can't reduce it for their allies. They can't fill it for their allies. And they can't reduce our turn bar, which means we are going to be in control in a game that is a turn-based game. So that is very, very important. Finally, we have Hercules. This is the final member of the team and the second of the new characters. Hercules' basic is called Around the World. It is going to attack the primary target for 250% damage. Enemies killed by this attack cannot be revived. So that's quite nice. And this attack cannot be dodged. And the T4 on this, which I don't recommend doing unless you really want to, is going to add an additional 70% damage to the primary target. Olympian Slam, this is going to be his ability that he starts with. It's going to attack the primary target and the adjacent targets for 350% damage. It's going to then do 100% drain and apply defense down. It's going to apply Disrupted to the primary target. It's going to apply offense up to self and all allies, and it's going to flip all negative effects into positive effects for self and all Mighty Avenger and Uncanny Avenger allies. This attack gains 300% focus and cannot be blocked or dodged. The T4 on this, which I've put down as a high value T4, is going to add 70% damage to the primary and secondary targets. It is also going to apply ability block to the primary target and apply offense up for 2 turns rather than the single turn. So that is, like I said, that is a very high value T4, well worth putting into him. The ability block alone would make it a high value without the ability to put the offense up for 2 turns. Labor of Strength, this is his ultimate, and again with Beast doing his special on turn 1, that should give us the ability to have this turn 2. Gain offense up for 2 turns, attack all enemies for 300% piercing plus 50% drain. This attack is unavoidable. And the T4 on this, which I have put down as an essential T4, again, plus 100% piercing, so that's 400% piercing damage. That is huge in the new stat meta. 400% damage ignoring armor is going to be massive, and reduce the speed bar on the primary target by 20%, which is why I've put this as an essential T4, because reducing, anytime you can reduce turn bar or speed bar on an enemy, that is going to give you the biggest benefit, because this is a turn-based game. Champion of Olympus, this is his passive. In raids on spawn, if this character has 3 or more mystic enemies, build speed bar of self and all Uncanny Avenger allies by 20%. On war offense on spawn, if this character has 3 or more mystic enemies, fill speed bar of self and all Mighty Avenger allies by 20%. Now, I'm not sure what this call out is for. It's probably a call out for something on the nodes within the Spotlight raid. But really, the only team I can think of that has 3 or more mystic enemies on it at the moment that would be used in Alliance War would be the Night Stalkers. And yes, that will possibly get them ahead of the Night Stalkers, but I don't see them as a big problem, especially not having a war team specific to deal with a raid team. Whenever this character takes an action, perform the following before the attack on the target. He's going to clear all charged, copy and clear all positive effects, excluding stealth, and copy and clear revive once. In raids, if this character is alive and has 4 or more uncanny. In raids, if this character is alive and has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, an Uncanny Avenger ally performs these actions on their target before taking an action, except they do not copy taunt. And on war offense, if this character is alive and has 4 or more Mighty Avenger allies, a Mighty Avenger ally performs these actions on their target before taking an action, except they do not copy taunt. So basically, he gives clearing charged, copy and clear all positive effects, excluding stealth, and copy and clear revive once, not only to himself on the target, but also to all his allies. So every single member of his team, his Uncanny Avenger team or his Mighty Avenger team, are going to get that ability, that clearing all charged, copy and clearing all positive effects, excluding stealth, and these guys don't copy taunt, but he will, and then copy and clear revive once. In raids, if this character has 4 or more Uncanny Avenger allies, or on war offense, if this character has 4 or more Mighty Avenger allies, enemy characters cannot fill speed bar for themselves or allies. This does not apply to speed bar gained through normal means, and gain 300% focus. Mighty Avenger and Uncanny Avenger allies gain 300% focus, so we should have no problems where focus is concerned. The T4 on this: in raids on spawn, apply safeguard for 2 turns to self and all Uncanny Avenger allies, and again on war offense on spawn, apply safeguard for 2 turns to self and all Mighty Avenger allies. So with Falcon and Hercules, you are getting immunity and safeguard for 2 turns in war and in raids. That is going to be huge. I cannot wait for Hercules to come out. And so here we have the infographic for the Uncanny Avengers. This will be available in the Jetson Squad Discord as per usual, which I'm going to leave a link to in the description down below. This will also be on my community tab. And so that concludes the 5 most important members that you are going to need to build, in my opinion. Let's move on to the next most important members. And we're going to begin with Cable. Now, the reason why I've chosen Cable is because he has an ability that has stayed around as old as time, which is this plus 5% speed bar, which we'll go over in a minute. So with the updated stats, I believe he is the next best bang for your buck to build. So Cable's basic plasma rifle, this is going to attack the primary target for 300% damage. If this character does not have charge, he's going to fill his speed bar by 80% and gain charged. So the T4 on this is going to add an additional 40% damage to the primary target, and I do not consider this to be a T4 that I am going to T4 certainly myself. This is a skip stroke luxury T4. Overload, this is his special. He's going to start with this. It's going to attack the primary target for 300% damage and reduce speed bar by 50%, and attack the adjacent targets for 170% damage and reduce their speed bar by 10%. If this character has charge, he's going to clear 3 positive effects from the primary target, clear 2 positive effects from the secondary target. So the attack targets 2 spaces from the primary target for 170% damage and reduces their speed bar. So you get a nice clump of 5 members there that he is going to be able to rewind if you put the shot in the right place. He's then going to lose charged. The T4 on this is going to add an additional 40% damage to the primary target, 20% damage to the secondary target, and if charged, he's going to clear all positive effects from the primary target. I've put this down as a high value T4 for that very reason, clearing all those positive effects from the primary target. Psychic Surge, this is his ultimate, attacks the primary target for 470% damage. On kill, he is going to fill the speed bar for self, a random Deadpool ally, and a random Jean Grey ally by 70%. He's going to gain an assist from a random Deadpool ally, although you probably won't see him with Deadpool that often. And this attack is unavoidable and cannot be blocked. The T4 on this I have put down as a high value. It's going to add 60% damage to the primary target, so that is going to give you 530% damage. And if this character has a Jean Grey ally, flip 2 positive effects to negative effects on the primary target and flip 2 negative effects to positive effects on self. So again, a high value T4 just for being able to control those positive effects on your opponent and negative effects on himself. Time Sense, this is the whole reason why we have kept Cable within the meta for a very long time. On spawn, he's going to fill the speed bar by 5% for self and all allies. On charged, he's going to barrier himself for 10% of his max health. On turn, he is going to have a 20% chance to apply counter to a random mutant ally or self. A 20% chance to apply counter to a random ally or self that does not have counter. And to barrier self for 10% of this character's max health. And on war offense, on spawn, he's going to gain charged. On spawn, he's going to build speed bar for self and all X-Force allies by an additional 5%, plus 5% per X-Force ally. And that's not really going to happen that much anymore, but it might make something happen later on in the game. Always apply counter to a random mutant ally or self is the T4, and on charged an additional 10% barrier. So again, this is a high value T4. The always applying counter to a random mutant ally or self is very, very good, but not an essential T4. So a high value T4 certainly. And so at this point we have 4 members of the Immortal X-Men Cosmic Crucible team built. That 5th member is Polaris, the Mistress of Magnetism, and Sanguine Iron is her basic attack. This is going to attack the primary target for 190% damage and adjacent targets for 160% damage and apply bleed. It's going to barrier the most injured non-summoned ally for 5% of this character's max health. And the T4 on this one, which again I have put down as a skippable stroke luxury T4, is going to add an additional 40% damage to the primary and secondary targets and an additional 5% barrier to the most injured non-summoned ally. Electrostatic Field, she's going to start with this ability. It's going to barrier self for 20% of this character's max health. It's then going to attack the primary and adjacent targets for 160% damage. If any target has bleed, that attack is 210% piercing instead. It's going to gain 50% extra crit chance against the primary target. This attack cannot be blocked. And the T4 on this one is going to add 30% damage to the primary and secondary targets, or 40% piercing to the primary and secondary targets with bleed, and it is always going to crit the primary target. That is a nice to have T4. could almost be considered a high value T4, especially with that always crit. But I would say definitely a nice to have T4. So reverse polarity, this is her ultimate. It's going to pull all enemies up to 2 spaces towards the primary target. It's going to attack the primary and adjacent targets within 2 spaces for 260% damage and apply disrupted for 2 turns and flip 2 regenerations to bleeds. If this character has a Jean Grey or multiple man ally, gain 100,000% extra focus to flip the regenerations to bleed. This attack is unavoidable and cannot be counterattacked. And the T4 on this one, which I've put down as a nice to have T4, is going to add an additional 40% damage to all targets and flip all regeneration, not just 2, to bleeds. And finally, Polaris's passive, Mistress of Magnetism. On self or ally crit, remove all deflect from the most injured non-summoned enemy that has deflect. When an enemy attacks this character or any character with barrier, apply bleed to that enemy. On offense, before this character takes a turn, this character and all allies cannot gain defense down. That is great. On Crucible offense, lower the crit chance of all enemies by 25% per Immortal X-Men ally up to a maximum of 50%. On War offense, not that we're going to be using them on War too often, just going to gain 10% max barrier, and any other X Factor allies that you put in with her, if there is some plug and play ability here, are going to gain 10% max barrier. The T4 on this, on Crucible offense, lower the crit chance of all enemies by 25% per Immortal X-Men ally up to a maximum of 100%. So you can make it so that your opponent has a 100% lowering of their crit chance. That is pretty huge, and I've put that down as a high value T4. And so here is the infographic for the Immortal X-Men. You'll see that I've only got one of them recommended at gear tier 19, and that is the newest character, Jean Grey. The reworks at current, I would leave at gear tier 18 until we find out anything about gear tier 20, which is going to be coming around the corner. And, you know, again, this is all going to depend on how much Crimson gear you have. But for me, certainly this is what I'm going to be doing with this team. And then finally, we come on to the Mighty Avengers. Now, this isn't because I think War is a bad game mode. I really enjoy War. I just think that because there are so many characters to build here, especially if you are someone who hasn't been playing the game for all 6 years. If you've been playing the game for 6 years, this is probably very simple for you guys to do. But if you're someone like me who's been playing for a couple of years now, a lot of these characters I'm actually having to bring up from level 1 to level 100. And so I need to be wary of my resources. So Invisible Woman would be the next member I would bring up. Her Cosmic Rays is going to attack the primary target for 250% damage. It's going to barrier self for 5% of this character's max health. The T4 on this is going to add an additional 40% damage and an additional 5% of this character's max health as barrier. This is a luxury T4 at best. Definitely a skip from myself. Bending Light, this is her special. It's going to clear 2 negative effects from the 3 most injured allies. It's going to apply stealth to the 3 most injured allies, apply defense up for 2 turns to self and all allies, clear stealth from the highest health ally, and apply 3 deflect plus immunity for 2 turns to the highest health ally, clear stealth from all enemies, gain an assist from 1 random ally and another random Mighty Avenger ally. And the T4 on this, which I have down as a high value T4, is going to clear all negative effects from self and all Mighty Avenger allies. That is great. Clear 2 negative effects from all other allies. That's amazing. And apply stealth to self and all allies. Psionic Shields, this is her ultimate. This is going to apply offense down for 2 turns to all enemies. So you're probably going to open up with this one. It's going to barrier all allies for 40% of this character's max health. And then the T4 on this, which again I've put down as a high value T4, is going to attack the enemy with the most speed bar for 150% piercing. And on war offense, bonus attack that enemy for 100% piercing and apply stun. So that is effectively 2 150% piercing attacks to the enemy with the highest speed bar and apply stun to them, which hopefully should mean that you manage to control the next person who is going to be going for your opponent. Hard Light, this is her passive. When an enemy deals damage to this character's barrier or an ally's barrier, attack that enemy for 250% damage. With the new damage stats, this ping is huge. On spawn, she's going to apply defense up for 2 turns to self and all allies. And on war offense, she's going to barrier self and all Mighty Avenger allies for 30% of this character's max health. She's going to gain 20% max health. Fantastic Four, Namor and She-Hulk allies are going to gain 20% max health. And on war offense, the first time this character or any Mighty Avenger ally drops below 30% health, clear all negative effects on that ally, apply defense up and stealth to that ally, and barrier that character for 30% of this character's max health. I've got that down as an essential T4. That is a way of keeping your characters alive for longer, clearing those negative effects, applying defense up so they're going to get damaged less, stealth so they're not going to be able to get attacked, and the barrier, and hopefully that's going to give you time to be able to put some heals out as well. So that is a very, very good T4, an essential T4. This gained 20% max health for Fantastic Four as well. Don't forget that just before the reworks, we had just before the stat increase, where at Ares we had the Illuminati, and with that we had Mr. Fantastic. So Mr. Fantastic gaining that 20% max health would be very nice. So she could almost also be a plug and play in Cosmic Crucible, which is why I have considered her to be one of the better characters to build first from the Mighty Avengers outside of Hercules and Falcon. Vision is... The next 2 characters here really have been done dirty. I would have liked to have seen better reworks for these guys. Vision, his heavy hitter attack is going to attack the primary target for 210% damage. It's going to chain to one adjacent target for 180% damage. Apply offense down to each target. Apply bleed to each tech target. Counter attack breaks this chain, and it's going to gain an assist from a random Scarlet Witch or Viv Vision ally. Now the T4 on this is going to add an additional 50% damage to the primary and secondary targets, making that 260% damage on the primary and 230% damage on the secondary target, and it's going to chain to 2 adjacent targets. So I have put this as a nice to have T4. One of the rare basics that is a nice to have T4. Dive Bomb, this is the special, and this is one that you can completely skip. Just take it up to its T3 ability and keep it there. It's going to attack the primary target for 210% damage and apply ability block. If the primary target is tech, it will apply ability block for 2 turns instead. Attack the adjacent targets for 160% damage and apply ability block to 1 random adjacent target. Generate 1 ability energy for a random Bionic Avenger ally that was not at full energy at the start of the current turn. That does not matter when the Mighty Avengers, so that is only for the very old tech raid team that you should not be building now. On war offense, if this character has 3 or more Mighty Avenger allies, this attack cannot be blocked or dodged. That's not too bad. The T4 on this is a complete waste because it adds 20% damage to the primary target. Okay. It generates 1 ability energy for a random Viv Vision ally. Again, Viv Vision is a member of the Bionic Avengers, and so this T4 is completely worthless now. I don't know why they didn't possibly change that to generate 1 ability energy for a random Scarlet Witch ally or something else. That would have been a really good ability on him, but they chose not to in this case. Solar Beam, this is his ultimate. He's going to attack all enemies for 300% damage and clear 2 positive effects and apply bleed. In raids, not that we're going to be using vision in raids, it's going to reduce the speed bar by 30% for all enemies, generate 1 ability energy for all adjacent Bionic Avenger allies. Again, that isn't going to happen. On war offense, if this character has a Scarlet Witch ally and 3 or more Mighty Avenger allies, apply trauma and ability block to all support enemies. That is quite nice. If this character has 3 or more Bionic Avenger allies, this attack is unavoidable. That is null and void. On war offense, if this character has a Scarlet Witch ally and 3 or more Mighty Avenger allies, reduce the speed bar by 30% for all enemies is what the T4 is going to do. And this is a very high value T4. Again, we're playing a turn-based game, so anytime we can reduce our opponent's speed bar is a good thing. Density manipulation, this is his passive. On spawn, he's going to gain defense up for 2 turns, apply defense up for 2 turns to all tech allies. When ally Viv Vision drops below 50% health, apply death proof to her. Doesn't really matter anymore. We're not using Bionic Avengers. On ally Viv Vision ability block, clear all negative effects on that character. Again, we are not playing with Bionic Avengers anymore. Gain 25% dodge chance. That is cool. Gain 50% focus. Nice. Bionic Avenger allies gain 25% focus. In raids, Bionic Avenger allies gain an additional 25% focus. The T4 for this one, on spawn in raids, apply immunity for 2 turns to self and all Bionic Avenger allies. On spawn, on war offense, apply 3 deflect to self and all Mighty Avenger allies. I've put this down as a nice to have T4. If you are struck on T4s, I would not bother with density manipulation as a T4. And finally, Scarlet Witch. When will she get an update that makes her really, really good? X-Bolt is her basic. This is going to attack the primary target for 190% piercing damage. It is also going to apply 1 to 2 random negative effects. If this character is not at full energy, this attack does 50% more damage. It is going to apply 1 to 2 random effects for 2 turns instead. And it's going to gain an assist from a random Vision ally. So Vision and Wanda are now going to be assisting each other on their basics. Pity that a war team isn't really going to get around to using those basics very often. The T4 on this is going to add 30% piercing, and if this character is not at full energy, apply offense down for 2 turns, defense down for 2 turns, and slow for 2 turns instead. I've put this down as a high value T4. I think applying the offense down, the defense down, and the slow is what really makes this a good ability, as long as she is not at full energy. And you would normally think that if you are using a basic, you would not be at full energy. Warp Reality, this is her special. It's going to heal self, 1 random Quicksilver ally, and 1 random Vision ally for 50% of this character's max health. And then it is going to redistribute your total squad health evenly, apply deflex to all allies, and apply defense up to a random Vision ally with a 50% chance to apply defense up to each ally. Now, this, I believe, is a high value T4. It is going to add an additional 50% healing. So that means 100% of this character's max health on the heal. and apply defense up to all allies instead of a 50% chance. So you're always going to get that defense up. That is a very high value T4 in my opinion. Her ultimate Chaos Wave, again, she's going to start with this one. This is going to attack all enemies for 135% piercing. Apply defense down to all enemies. If Quicksilver or Vision is an ally, this attack deals double damage to all enemies. Prolong the duration of all negative effects by 1 on each enemy. That's why this ability is so good. This attack is unavoidable. Pardon me. This attack is unavoidable. And if Quicksilver or Vision is an ally, this attack cannot be blocked. The T4 on this, which I've put down as a high value T4, is going to add 15% piercing. So that makes that 150% piercing damage. And on War Offense, if this character has 3 or more Mighty Avenger allies, it's going to reduce the duration of defense up on each enemy by 2. Any positive effect that has a duration of 0 expires instantly. So this is like decaying defense up only. So a bit like what Thanos Endgame is doing, but just for the condition of defense up. And Power of Python, this is her passive. On spawn, she's going to apply +1 charge up to a maximum of 5 to a random Quicksilver ally. Probably not going to be using Quicksilver with her, but we'll see. On turn, 50% chance to spread a negative effect from an enemy with a negative effect to an adjacent target. This will not spread stun. On attack, gain deflect when an enemy attacks a Quicksilver or Vision ally. She's going to attack that enemy for 250% damage. On death, apply offense up, defense up, speed up, counter and evade to 1 random Quicksilver or Vision ally. That's quite nice. And on Quicksilver or Vision ally death, she's going to gain offense up, defense up, speed up, counter and evade. The T4 on this, on spawn on War Offense, if this character has 3 or more mystic enemies, she's going to generate 1 ability energy for a random Vision ally. Again, this call out from Hercules and Scarlet Witch about 3 or more mystic enemies. Is this for a future team down the line, or is this just to counter Night Stalkers? Why don't you let me know in the comments down below what you think. When she was a member of the Darkhold team, so that is what we are going to keep her as. And here is the infographic for the Mighty Avengers. Again, this will be available on the Jetson Squad Discord or in the community tab on my YouTube channel. And so some final thoughts. I have produced this in the order I feel you should be building your teams. The Uncanny Avengers are the most important team to build. Raids are one of the most important game modes in the game, and so you want to get them built early. And you want to start saving your power cores for Jean Grey, who is coming out on the 3rd of January. Why don't you let me know your thoughts on the 2 new members of the game, Jean Grey and Hercules, down below, and what you think of the reworks. Do you think they've done Scarlet Witch dirty? I certainly do. Don't forget, if this video has been helpful to you, please do consider giving it a like and share it with one of your alliance mates maybe. And until next time, stay positive.